Sorry.
What if this
TikTok lets you do
is
like
the one that we begged
10
for?
minutes. Anyway, so this
What if
guy,
my higher power let me come back?
I don't know where I left off
So I
exactly,
have
but
to see the mountains again.
we're staring at each other.
Be on the lake
And
where the sun kissed me.
I end up having to use energy.
Laugh with my
the
friends
spirit.
until my stomach hurts.
No words. We're looking at each
Get
other.
my heart broken
And it
over.
sent out in waves. And it pushes
Cry
this
and
thing
push
out of
away
him.
in the shower.
And
Buy myself flowers.
I'm sitting
1,000
there
times.
at one point, and after this,
Hear a beautiful song.
he does
for the
this
first
weird
time.
thing where he starts breathing really like crazy, and then the thing leaves, and when it leaves,
What if I made a promise?
their eyes roll back, he comes back, and now I'm dealing with him again. I asked him what his name was. He said Abraham. It's okay. And he leans up across my counter. Well, first he says, I said, how do you feel? And he says, now, and mind you, the whole thing with the energy was in my mind. This is something God has shown me to do. In my life, I've never applied it to another person. But when I'm physically ill, or if someone is ill and you're doing healing, it can be used. And so, anyways, I said to him, how do you feel? He said, I felt something pulsing up through me, energy, and pushing it out. He said, I feel like there are wounds, and that's how they get in. And I told him a bunch of stuff about, that God was telling me. And while I'm standing there talking to him, I hear a word roll through my head, and it's so loud that I immediately just repeat it because this has happened before. And so I said to him, pornography. He said, that was the start. He said, it was much worse than that. I'm into homosexuality. Now, I'm just going to point out that this guy, supposedly in a deliverance ministry. And yet here I am, casting a demon out of him. Perfect place to hide, right? In a deliverance ministry. Who's going to lay their hands on the guy who's delivering everybody? It was weird. It was crazy. Right after the thing left him, or right before, he looks up at the sky. He said, I heard Samson and Delilah. Well, that morning when Mom and I had got up, she gets a Bible verse on her phone. And the Bible verse was about Samson and Delilah. And I was driving, so honestly, I'm having this vision, and I'm talking to God the whole time I'm driving. And I really did not pay attention to the actual verse, but I knew it was about Samson and Delilah. So when he said Samson and Delilah, I was like, oh my God. Like God was telling me that morning this was coming. And then he says, I'm a Delilah spirit, the spirit of Delilah. Well, I didn't know what that meant. At a point during this, I looked around and my mother had decided we need privacy. She didn't know that this was going to happen. She didn't discern it at all for some reason. So she went outside. And I had turned and looked at his wife at one point and asked her, did you know he had these demons? And she said yes, and she's crying. And he knew he had it. He said, I know it's been there for 12 years. So, okay. Well, in the process of me coming around the corner initially when they had first got there, I had knocked my water over, which was in a sealed container. And lo and behold, for the first time ever, I knocked it over, and the lid came open, which doesn't happen. And it spilled water all over the floor. And when the water hit the floor and I looked down at the water, I reached down to pick my cup up and I hear baptism. And this is before the demon was manifested. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is weird. So I turn around my mom was gone. And so now it's like I'm realizing I had been toe-to-toe with this thing. I don't have any help. A lady had come up, saw what was happening, and she turned and like got the weird face and just ran away. And I'm thinking, okay, this is unusual. This is weird. And I'm talking to them, and I said to her, I said, you are the white lion. There's a lamb and there's a lion dwelling inside of you, and you have to become the white lion. You are the white lion. While I'm telling this woman this, my mother is outside and hears you are the white lion and believes that God is telling her she is the white lion. She hears what I'm telling this other woman, that was God, and decides to come back in and not leave me alone. So she comes back in. About this time, she's just seeing the guy, the end of him kind of gyrating and whatever right before, and acting completely weird, like he's skitzing out right before it leaves. So she's there. It all runs together. I mean, it was so fast. It was crazy. I didn't even have time to think. I wasn't even thinking. I mean, before I know it, my hand's in the air. Before I know it, I'm talking to this thing. Long story short, they pay for the painting. They leave. At the end of it, for some reason, God tells him he needs to hug his wife. And as he's hugging her, he adds to it that he also wants to kiss her. And I notice she doesn't really want to kiss him back. And I explained to her that she was Samson, and that spirit of Delilah wanted to destroy her ministry. We all have one. What I did not understand at that moment is that spirit had come to try me. God had given me authority, and no sooner than he gives me authority, here it comes. But he had sent me warning along the way, and he had told me I was going to deal with an unbeliever. Just because someone's casting out a demon obviously does not mean that they know Christ, all right? At the end of all this, before they leave, she starts to thank me for everything, and I very strongly corrected her. I said, it's not me. I've never done anything to deserve this. I didn't do anything. I hear a voice and I repeat it. That's all. I said, I'm a vessel. The vessel is not important. The water that's coming out of the vessel, that living water, is what's important. And I was so humbled. A little bit freaked out, honestly, because it was like, I know why he didn't warn me. Because honestly, in your mind, you may have tried to back out. We don't even talk about it. People, read about it in the Bible, but they don't experience it, so they don't know what it is. If you're in a marriage and you're joined to someone who is demonic or who is not serving the Lord, there is deliverance. It doesn't always work that way, and sometimes God will absolve that marriage. And I'm sorry if you don't believe in divorce or whatever. God will do that, and it may not be divorce, it may be death, it may be whatever. But when you're unequally yoked, he will allow that for a time until you have outgrown that relationship and learned the lesson you're supposed to learn. And this couple was there, okay? They were there. Her name was Promise. The promise was unto Abraham. I watched this man ignore us completely when he came back and prayed to God for forgiveness. And I believe God heard him. It does not always work this way. They do not always get delivered. Some people keep their demons and they dwell with them and they love them and they let them back in. And I cautioned him not to make himself an open vessel, but to believe he had power over them. I could have never planned this. I did not intend to start my video series this way.